or so. And so we're going to try to keep it to 45 minutes and then give everyone some time back. We'll try that. We'll leave room at the end for any questions. And if there's anything specific to you that you would like to ask that maybe is more private, or you just want to ask that privately, you can reach out to anyone on Yvonne's team in admission, or you can reach out to Michael directly. So we're going to get started. Good morning, everyone who's there, or good afternoon, actually. So welcome to our very first HR Insights. We are really excited to do this. We're excited that you're all here and joining us for this. This is a interactive platform. It's really for knowledge sharing in specific areas that maybe our community has questions on. And each time we have these sessions, we're sort of aiming for a specific topic and whatever makes sense at that time of the year. So at the beginning of the academic year, we felt that admission and financial aid makes sense. And so we wanted to thank our presenting partners, Yvonne and Michael. And we appreciate their sharing of their knowledge today. Sophia, is there anything else from your perspective?
Yes, thank you. Following today's session, we will be asking for feedback on what topics you would like to see scheduled in the future. So please share your thoughts with us. We will also be providing information to our website where you can view this recording and additional related resources. So look for that in the next few days.
Thanks so much. Okay, we're going to hand it over to Yvonne.
Hello, everyone. Again, my name is Yvonne Baruman. I'm the Vice President of Admission and Financial Aid. And I would say consider Mike and myself your exclusive counselors when it comes to admission and financial aid, because we've both been doing this for a really long time. And so if there's any way that we can help you as you're considering moving on, if you're interested in this, or your kids or family, friends, it's nice to be able to have someone to talk to, because oftentimes the information that's out there isn't always as accurate as the information that probably Mike and I can provide for you. So what I wanted to do is, with regards to college admission, is keep it a little general. Not every student is interested in coming to Pitzer, and so we are lucky to be in the state of California, where we have 4 systems of higher education that we can all attend and we can make use of. The great thing about the 4 systems of higher education in California is that they're all really well regarded and gives you lots of different options. And so just to begin, one of the things that's really nice even about some of our community college options, for those of you that are considering or your kids may be considering, let's just face it, admission to college is very expensive. And so one of the nice things about the state of California is that our students can attend community colleges actually for free. So that's always a really good option for those students that are interested in starting there. I have found that many students that are interested in a community college, they're trying to save money. They definitely want to first take a few classes before they decide on a major and what direction they want to go. So community college is always a really good option for that. Pitzer always accepts students that are coming from community colleges, either via the transfer route or the new resource route. I'm happy to talk to folks about those specific routes afterwards, but that may be an option that families and students explore. The UCs, we have UCLA, UC Berkeley, UCI, lots of different institutions. UCs tend to be a little bit on the selective side. So similar to Pitzer, they do tend to run a little bit more selective. The interesting thing about the UCs and the CSUs is there's one application that you can use for either the UCs or the CSUs. Both have a November 30th deadline. And so as you're looking for some of those UCs, generally you can apply to 3 or 4. The good thing about the UCs is if in the case you don't get admitted to your top choice, which might be UCLA or UC Berkeley, they often do give you options. And so it could be UC Santa Barbara or UC Riverside, different options that you might explore if in the case you don't get into your top choice UC. In most cases with UCs, you do have to have above a 3.5 GPA. In some cases, much higher than that. UCLA is one of the more selective schools. On average, their GPAs are over a 4.0. Difference again with community colleges is that there's an application, but it's not selective. So you don't need a GPA per se or essays or anything like that. With the UCs, it is more selective. So they do require a higher GPA. Generally, they do want to see students taking those honors and APs in high school. And then in addition to that, there's generally like an essay of some sort. That is an option for those students that are interested in kind of that particular type of institution. The CSUs are your Cal States, Cal State LA, Cal State San Bernardino, San Diego State is actually a Cal State. Again, November 30th is a deadline. There is one application for all the CSUs, and so you can check the ones that you're interested in. And with the CSUs, they vary in selectivity. And in many cases, the more selective the CSU, the more they will recruit from their region. So for example, Cal State Long Beach is one of the more selective Cal States. And so generally their first choice in terms of who they admit tend to be those within proximity to Long Beach. Cal Poly Pomona is another Cal State, also one of the more selective. And so again, typically they will first select students from their particular region. For both those kind of selective CSUs, they tend to have higher GPAs. So it's important to look specifically at those particular institutions that you're interested in to find out what is the required GPA or what are they looking for in terms of admission. In many cases with the CSUs, they're also looking specifically at majors. So for example, if you're interested in engineering or if you're interested in economics, those might be more selective, for example, than if you attend as an undeclared student. But you also want to take into consideration challenges that may happen if you decide to change majors. So again, for those particular schools and those types of schools, it's really important that you connect with the representative of the desired school. So that way they can speak specifically as to the requirements of the major and also what they're looking for admission. Private colleges. So that's like a Pitzer College. It's any of the Claremont colleges. It can be like USC. It could be Harvard. Private colleges with those, the deadlines vary. And so for the most part, you want to make sure you're keeping tabs on what the deadlines are for all of your specific schools. In some cases, they'll have a specific deadline. So for example, ours is January 5th, and that's for all regular decision candidates. In some cases, it could be rolling, which means that they're admitting students as they're coming. So again, the deadlines will vary and the styles of how they admit may vary. Some schools like Pitzer have what's called early decision, and other schools may have early action. Early decision is actually a binding agreement with the student. And so for the most part, students can only apply to one school early decision. And generally, if they apply to that school, they must commit. So think of it as if it's early decision, it's binding. You're going to that school. I strongly recommend, if financial aid is a consideration, that you check with the financial aid offices. Definitely, as Mike will talk about net price calculators, that these options are affordable. As you consider these options as well, know that the only way a student can get out of a binding agreement like early decision is if it's for financial reasons. So students should have done all of their research prior if they decide to apply early decision. The other option is early action. Early action is non-binding, and so students just are basically notified earlier. And then there's one other option called early action single choice. So lots of different options with this, but at least with early action, you are not required to attend. So in some cases, I believe, for example, Trying to think of a school that has early action. Colorado College has both early decision and early action. So again, you want to find out what different options, and again, those deadlines may vary. So keep that in mind. And again, I don't want to bombard you with too much information, but just know that those are very important when it comes to the application process in getting into these schools. So definitely consult with your college counselor at the particular school. Students should be meeting with their college counselor at least at the start of their junior year, definitely into their senior year, to start narrowing down those options, because most of those deadlines are very early in the fall. As far as testing, many schools have decided to go test required, test optional, or test blind. So there's three different routes that could occur there. With the test required, they will notify you if that is the case. Most schools, particularly after the pandemic, chose to go test optional. And generally what that means is that it's your choice to submit testing or not. They're not going to hold you to it. In some cases, they may ask for the testing after you're admitted, and that's for record purposes, but it won't impact your admission should you decide not to submit optional, because again, it is optional. With tests required, there are very few schools right now that are still requiring testing. Those tend to be MIT, Dartmouth. I know Harvey Mudd is looking at bringing back testing, but a lot of that happened as a result of the pandemic. The challenge with those schools that are doing test required is that there are very few test sites, because in the California systems, both the UCs and CSUs did away with testing. Those institutions that require testing are few and far between. So many high schools are no longer offering the SAT or the ACT for these particular schools that are continuing to require testing. I've heard in some cases families having to travel over 200 miles to find an SAT or an ACT test site. So if you are applying to a school that requires the testing, please plan appropriately, because that may take time to find a test site that is open and one that you're able to reach in the required time to submit that application. And then of course there are schools like Pitzer that are test blind, meaning that we are not going to ask for testing. Even if you take the test, we're not going to require it or look at it. So there are different options. So again, as you're going through what is best for your child, or you want to make sure that you're taking into consideration what their testing choices are. Most important thing, as I will leave you with before turning it over to Mike, is that really speak to your college counselor. Have your students speak to the college counselor, so that way they can provide additional information with regards to what they need to do in preparation to apply to college. In the junior year, they should be visiting colleges, they should be attending college fairs, they should be speaking to college reps. Oftentimes we go to high schools and we'd love to speak to students that are interested in Pitzer. And if they can't make it, we always like when they send us a note saying, I couldn't make the visit from Pitzer because I have a test, but I'm very interested. Great, we actually hold on to that information. So it's really important that they're connecting with their college counselors. If you have any questions specific to admissions or financial aid, please feel free to talk to myself or anyone in my office, and we'll be happy to assist you. So I'm going to turn it over now to Mike.
Great. Thank you so much, Yvonne. Marie, we can move to the next slide. Thank you. Just to preface, with financial aid, it is a yearly process. So some of the conversations that we're going to have today may change, especially if you've not heard. The FAFSA has seen a number of changes this upcoming year, and we'll see changes for the future years to come. So a little bit of a roadmap on what we're going to be discussing today. First is just a little bit of how to get financial aid, so a little bit about the application process, what that looks like. We'll discuss a timeline and discuss a variety of topics and items that you're going to need to address as you continue to navigate through the financial aid process. And then lastly, just some tips and tricks. One thing that we won't be discussing today, but I'm happy to discuss in more depth, is just the type of aid programs that are out there. So if you have any questions about types of aid, etc., please feel free to reach out to me or my team. We're happy to help guide you on those. So let's get started on a little bit about the application process. So there are two primary applications that you may experience and have to apply for financial aid. First is the FAFSA that most individuals are accustomed to and also have been submitting for many years. And that is the free application for federal student aid, which is managed and updated by the Department of Ed. And again, this year we've seen major changes to the FAFSA form. It is easier, even through the variety of changes that they made. But more notably, it also is a measurement of what they call now a student aid index. And that student aid index takes into account a variety of variables to determine your aid eligibility. But for the FAFSA, most institutions are going to request this application if they award Title IV aid, which is federal student aid. And again, you'll see why it's required, because it is an application for federal aid, loans, work-study awards. In addition, the FAFSA also gets sent to many state aid agencies. So here in the state of California, the FAFSA is sent to the California State Aid Application Processing. So they will review that FAFSA form and then determine eligibility from there. So again, you will become accustomed to submitting the FAFSA form at most institutions across the country. And with that, it will provide you some information on the student aid index, which is going to take into account primarily the number of individuals in your household and your adjusted gross income. There's some other variables that are in that calculation, but those are the two big data variables that come up with that SAI. Now, in the past, one of the dynamics that was also included in this calculation was the number in college. And I'll talk about that again in a moment. That is no longer in the calculation. So if you do have multiples in college, the FAFSA no longer will work in your favor in full transparency, because it does not account for the number of students that are in college. And with the FAFSA, it is the free application for federal student aid. So it is a free application. I will share that there are many consulting agencies and other agencies out there that do provide support for students and families to submit the application for federal student aid, but they will charge you for that service. Please never pay for that. With that, please always reach out to our office if you have any questions regarding the FAFSA or even financial need at another institution. We are happy to help guide you on that. We don't want you to have to pay for any of those services. So with that, the FAFSA will be sent to many schools that you've included on the FAFSA application, in addition to their state aid agencies, depending on the state that you live in. With that, the institution may have their own financial aid application in addition to the FAFSA, which is normally very short, or they may ask for the CSS profile, which is an application that we request here at Pitzer. Now, the CSS profile is the College Scholarship Service Profile, and this has been around for quite some time as well. It has been developed by the College Board and is used by about 400 or so institutions across the country. With that, that's only about 10% of institutions or so. So I will say institutions that use the CSS profile do tend to provide 100% of financial need. So you're going to say, what does that mean, Mike? So the FAFSA is going to look at your adjusted gross income, the number of individuals in your household, and then do that SAI calculation. The CSS profile is going to do a deeper review. It's going to look at your assets. It's going to look at your adjusted gross income, the number in college, the number in your household, and even some other areas where it does a deeper review of your financials. And from there, it will provide us what is the contribution towards educational expenses. Now, for some families, this FAFSA calculation and the CSS profile might be close. For others, they're heavily swayed. And that could be for a variety of reasons. But again, institutions that do meet that 100% of financial need do tend to ask for that CSS profile because they want to take a full look at the financials of the family. And then also say, based off of this application and taking a deeper look at your finances, this is what the institution would expect you to pay towards educational costs. Now, the FAFSA, again, just does that calculation, and that's going to be the same calculation at most institutions. versus a CSS profile, that calculation can change from school to school because each institution is going to have their own institutional measures on how they award financial aid. So if you do go to an institution that does accept the CSS profile, do be mindful that you're likely going to have to submit a variety of additional documents, as well as a variety of different questions will be asked of you to provide a deeper review of your financials. But what I will say about the CSS profile is it is traditionally a better calculation as to what you can pay towards educational costs versus the FAFSA that just looks at a higher level overview. So again, don't let the CSS profile persuade you from really going through the financial aid process, because in full realization, it might provide you more support because it's giving more information to the institutions. Now, with that, the CSS profile does have a cost component, and that's $25 for the first school and then $16 for every school thereafter. If your adjusted gross income is under $100,000, you then can have waivers. In addition, if your adjusted gross income is under $100,000 and you have limited assets, you can even go through a CSS Profile Lite application, which will only ask you a handful of questions versus all of the CSS profile questions. So again, these two applications are unique in themselves, but the FAFSA traditionally will be requested of everyone from all institutions across the country that are awarding Title IV aid. And the CSS profile is about 400 or so institutions. And those are the institutions that are meeting 100% of financial need. So they'll ask those deeper questions. Next slide, please. Now, let's have a conversation about the financial aid timeline. If you are working with your student, they're in their sophomore year, that is actually the time, and even their freshman year, as Yvonne mentioned, build those relationships with college counselors, talk about career plans, opportunities, because those career and college counselors will help guide your student and others through a variety of other dynamics to determine where they should apply. And what also they should help them with is affordability. So looking at this financial aid timeline, you really want to start in your junior year of high school with your student of looking at outside scholarship opportunities. Now, we have internal scholarships, but there are a variety of other external scholarships out there. And I provided some names and hyperlinks in this presentation of those outside scholarship sources. Given today's climate and the variety of FAFSA issues we are working through, there are a variety of scholarships that are out there for students, external in nature, that I would highly encourage your student to apply for, especially if they come from a background where, might not be the norm. There are a variety of scholarships out there for everything you can potentially think of. Now, the one thing I will say about outside scholarships is depending on the dynamic in your financial aid, it could impact the aid that you're awarded in institutions, especially those that collect a CSS profile. We could get deeper into those conversations on a personal level. So if you have any questions related to that, again, please feel free to reach out to myself or my team. But there are some dynamics where if you get an outside scholarship, it can replace some of the other aid that you've been awarded. So with that, we are moving forward and we are going to now get into October and we're going to apply for the CSS profile. And this is during your senior year. Now, your senior year, traditionally, you would also submit the FAFSA during this time frame as well. But because of all the FAFSA issues, that is now delayed till December 1st. So with that, please be mindful that traditionally the FAFSA and the CSS profile are open every October. This year and future years at the moment, it's going to be the CSS profile that opens in October, and then the FAFSA will open in December. Now, if you only need to submit the FAFSA, then you don't need to really do anything until December. You submit that FAFSA, and then you wait to hear from institutions. They will tell you about any missing documents, so please make sure that you're keeping an eye on any emails that are going out to your student or yourself. During this time frame, you're going to receive these aid letters as you submit those documents, and that's where you're going to have to sit down and have conversations with your student on what options are out there for you. What I would encourage you to do is take a look at those aid offers and review all those options out there for you. When we come to the summer months, this is where we've already made our decision by May 1, which is the national reply date for many institutions. And now we're finalizing our aid offers. And we're submitting any outstanding documents that schools might need to review in order to disperse that aid to accounts. Now, once your student enrolls in college and gets started, the other thing that I'd like to mention is please be mindful that this is a yearly process. So each year you will have to reapply. So starting again every October or December, depending on the applications you're submitting, you'll need to resubmit those every year thereafter. Next slide. So as we move into some tips and tricks, as Yvonne mentioned, I would highly encourage everyone to check out the net price calculator. This is a great tool that should be on every institution's website that awards Title IV aid and gives you a snapshot of what you might expect to pay towards educational expenses at those institutions. Also, too, this college scorecard is a new tool that will become more robust. And what it does provide is just an overview of how much student debt students take out at that respective institution, graduation outcomes, and a variety of other aid programs and how much aid they offer to their respective students. So be mindful to check out that college scorecard. Any applications that you're filling out, make sure that you're always echoing yes to the financial aid questions, and also make sure that you are putting in everything accurately. That also includes putting in social security numbers accurately, etc. One digit incorrectly in your social on a FAFSA can create a variety of challenges. So it's super important that you be mindful and take your time in submitting these documents. As I mentioned previously, aid is on a yearly basis. You will need to apply every year moving forward. And also be mindful of what aid application you're submitting. There are timeframes where both aid applications will be available. So you could be submitting an application for the current application year and not an upcoming application year. And also, as Yvonne mentioned, there are deadlines for early decision and a variety of other application deadlines. There are also financial aid deadlines. So be mindful to stay on top of those as well. Next slide, please. You want to get all of your documents together, make sure that you timely submit those to schools, ask any questions. If they are probing and asking you for documents and you're unsure, make sure you reach out to them directly. On the CSS profile, there is an option and you will have to submit many of the documents electronically with the FAFSA. Much of the data will be imported over directly from the IRS versus the CSS profile. You will have to data enter it and upload documentation along with it. So those that go through the CSS profile will have a longer process. As I mentioned before, keep an eye out on those emails and also frequently check student portals. One conversation piece that I've had with a number of families just this past weekend on orientation is once your student starts to enroll at these respective institutions, please be mindful that your student may be getting communications and not yourself. And because of FERPA regulations, etc., you might want to be mindful of that you might need to submit a release in order to have those conversations. Last slide, please. And as I close out, just some financial aid tips and tricks. Always ask questions. That's just to ourselves too. If you have any questions relating your student or yourself for financial need here at Pitzer, at any other institution, we're happy here to help. Also too, make sure you ask and be an advocate for yourself, but be patient. And just be mindful that the financial aid process may be longer at some schools versus others, and don't lose your cool. Financial aid staff members are staff members too. We are sometimes going to ask you some personal questions related to your finances, which might seem like we're probing a little bit, but please know we're just trying to make sure that we give you some accurate information there. So as you continue to navigate through that process, be mindful that we're here to work with you and reach out to my team and myself if you have any questions. And now I'm going to pass it over to Deanna, who's going to talk about tuition exchange and tuition remission.
Thank you, Michael, so much. Really appreciate that. So two other options for tuition assistance. Pitzer, of course, has tuition remission, which is tuition reimbursement. And for employees, within the Claremont colleges, we pay 100% for our tuition remission program. And then we also have for dependents. We have 50% for dependents. So if you here or anyone you know has any questions about tuition remission, please make sure they come and talk to us. It's also on our HR webpage, some more specifics, so we can go over that. Tuition exchange, Pitzer also participates in that, and it's a scholarship program. It allows anyone who works for Pitzer, faculty or staff, they can apply to any schools that participate in the tuition exchange. So if my daughter, for example, wants to go to a participating school, they can apply to that school. And then, of course, that school is the one that elects who is awarded this scholarship. We have over 700 participating colleges, and we've noted there the tuition exchange link, and they have great information. You'll see all of the colleges that participate. So I would encourage you, if you have a dependent that would like to, that's going to school and maybe Pitzer is not their first choice, then they can go ahead and take a look at the schools that participate. I would say a year in advance would be a good idea to take a look. It takes a little bit of time to understand the program, but if you want to head over to our office and ask any questions about that, we have that information for you. I think that's it for today. I'm going to leave it for any questions, if for Michael or for Yvonne or myself.
Feel free to unmute if you have any questions, or you're trying to enter them in the chat.